We'll start in the usual way. So by saying good morning or good evening and some pleasantries like that. Hope everyone's doing well. Um, yeah, I have a confession to make, but let's first start by adjusting our motivation. Please thinking that the purpose of my life is to benefit all sentient beings, and therefore, in order to benefit sentient beings in the best way, I must first achieve the state of complete enlightenment. Then and only then will I have all the skills, qualities to guide sentient beings most effectively from the oceans of samsaric suffering to the state of enlightenment. And therefore, I need to learn about all the various practices that lead to that state. And therefore, I am going to engage in this Dharma teaching here today. Okay. And could you enable screen sharing? Actually, hold on 1 second. You know what? Um, okay, you know what? Yeah, I'll do that second. Okay. So here, as I think all of you know, but just to recall or refresh the memory, this normal taking refuge in genuine bodhicitta verse, right? What do we normally have, right? The first two lines are the same. This is a special formulation for before we receive teachings. And so the first two lines are the same. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly. Okay. But normally we have what? By my merits of, actually nowadays we have by the collections of giving and so forth, maybe something like that. So the Tibetan Dagi Jin Sok Gibe Soknamki. Okay. So this is, I mentioned this in the DB course, but okay, so here's your Tibetan lesson for the day. Da is self, right? So sometimes you'll hear dak me, dak me. Me is a negation word, so that's selfless. They translate that as. So dak is self. Gi is like, making I into mine. Okay. Ch is the same word here, right? Sangye, Buddha. Ch is Dharma. So ch, Dharma here. Nyen, nyen. Gipe, gipe, gi in literary Tibetan is like doing something, an action word. Gipe, okay, so Sonam is also a very common name in Tibetan. Yeah, you know someone named Sonam? Hmm? So one of my very precious gurus, Sonam Rinchen, Genrim Sonam Rinchen. And Sonam Rinchen actually is also the name of the ordained name of Gampopa. Have you heard of Gampopa? He wrote this text, The Jewel Ornament of Liberation, which is in the Kagyu tradition, is their kind of equivalent of the Lamrim. And yeah. maybe 4 years ago, Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, he organized the oral transmission of this in Root Institute in Bodh Gaya. And he received the teaching himself because he hadn't received it before. And the Lama who gave it, maybe Shanti remembers, the Ladakhi Lama, who was actually the attendant of Lama Kunu Lama Rinpoche. So Kunu Lama Rinpoche also, sorry for all this kind of trivia, but this is a little bit important. So Kunu Lama Rinpoche, you should know. Kunu Lama Rinpoche was from the Kinnaur region of India, okay? And he was a great Sanskrit scholar. And he is the one from whom His Holiness the Dalai Lama received the teaching on Bodhisattva Charyavatara. Bodhisattva Charyavatara, Shantidev's Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way of Life. Okay. And now, of course, when you listen to His Holiness will credit that text as being so important and basically everything he needed to learn about bodhicitta, he learned from that text. So anyway, he was, one of His Holiness's own gurus, and an important one, because just as Atisha, if you remember, Atisha had 151 gurus, Atisha Dipamkara, but of those 151 gurus, who he regarded as most precious, as most kind, was Lama Tsulingpa, because Lama Tsulingpa is the one who taught him actually both traditions of how to attain bodhicitta. And so in the Lamrim text, it always says how although Lama Tsulingpa was a Chittamatra, a mind-only school adherent, and Atisha was a Prasangika. So in terms of philosophical viewpoint, Atisha was higher, right? Nonetheless, Atisha held Lama Tsulingpa as being kindest because of the teachings on bodhicitta. So one story about Kunu Lama Rinpoche, is coming to my mind now. And this is important. We were talking about this in other context. Okay. So, unfortunately, Kunu Lama Rinpoche took the aspect of passing away, so many years ago. I didn't meet him. And by now, His Holiness the Dalai Lama has become so famous. And when there's teachings, so many thousands of people come, there's all sorts of security. It's very hard to sort of get close and meet him. So you can imagine, this is probably in the 80s, right? In the 80s, before His Holiness received the Nobel Peace Prize, it was relatively easy to get an audience, relatively easy to meet him, all this. Yet still, there was some sort of security. So in the 80s, okay, I think this is in Bodh Gaya, I'm not sure where, but His Holiness was teaching, and Kunu Lama Rinpoche comes and is trying to go maybe close or on stage, and his security stop him, So you have to understand, Kunu Lama Rinpoche, although he was a great scholar, he was particularly the top Sanskrit scholar, and therefore, when he taught Bodhisattva Charyavatara, he would use the Sanskrit and Tibetan and other elements. Like in other teachings, he would you know, if he was teaching Nagarjuna, he would always go back to Sanskrit, so forth. Mm. But he was very unassuming in his appearance. And it was said that even his robes were quite, you know, frayed, you know, maybe a little bit, kind of like this one. You can see. I'm not praising myself, but, you know, this should be like a quite dark blue. Can you see? But it's a little faded. Okay. Yeah, whatever, right? Sometimes like here on the back collar, it becomes so frayed that it gets a hole in it. Two of my donkas have that now. I'm just, you know, I'm too lazy to go and get new robes. I have others, but you know, I like to wear things. Sorry, I'm kind of on a various tangents. I will say this because some of you know Geshe Namdak. So Geshe Namdak was also like this, and then once he met Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and Rinpoche like noticed, okay, his robes were a bit faded and maybe a little bit frayed. And Rinpoche was like, because I think Geshe Namdak, he was about to go to the West. This is like, you know, 15 years ago, like way before he became, you know, famous. But Lama Zopa Rinpoche noticed his robes and was like, your robes are a bit frayed. And then, you know, I don't know, maybe Namdak was, you know, oh yes, Rinpoche. But Rinpoche said, well, since you're about to go to the West, you should buy new robes and wear them when you go to the West, because here in India, you know, they might see it as a sign of renunciation, but in the West, they don't like that. They'll think that, oh, the people don't take care of the Sangha, or the Sangha themselves don't take care of themselves, this kind of thing. Okay, anyway. So Kunu Lama Rinpoche, when he goes to he tries to approach where His Holiness is, and you know, since he was so, you know, kind of unassuming and kept a low profile, the security went to stop him, right? Okay. So His Holiness sees what's happening, because there's, you know, some commotion down there. He sees what's happening and gets off from the throne and like goes down to prostrate to his teacher. Yeah. I heard that story. Of course I wasn't there, but can you imagine? Anyway, so these kinds of stories actually have a lot of implications into how we, you know, should think about dharma, how we should think about our gurus, and how we should practice. So it's not just you know, wandering around. Okay. So anyway, uh, where did this come from? Is because Sunam, right? Then you see, this is maybe I'm channeling Lama Zopa Rinpoche. It's a slight bit today, right? Then every time, if you had the good fortune to receive teachings from Rinpoche, you know, there'd be a departure point, and then the story would come, and then it would always be a kind of a little bit exercise in our mindfulness to see, okay, well, how does the story fit into the overall picture? It's very, very important. Okay. So here is Sunam, Sunam ki. Then it became Sunam Rinchen. That's a very common name. It's one of my guru's names. And Gampopa wrote Jewel Ornament Liberation. Kagyu Lamrim. Rinpoche got the transmission. And again, remember, we're talking about the importance of, oral transmissions, like Golden Light Sutra. Okay. So then, Sunamki. The normal one, Jinso. Dagi Jinso. Gibe Sunamki. Right? Jin is giving. Sok is like a etc. Gibe is like doing, right? So normally it's like by my merits of giving and other perfections. But then you saw, hold on, let's see. I'm going to try to find it. Yeah, okay. You'll see it. Okay, here. Here. See? Yeah. Very good. Very good. Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Okay, I'll tell Somo at Land of Medicine Buddha. This should be a lowercase I, right? So in this refuge verse, Rinpoche advised to change Sunam in the third line to Soknam, right? Soknam. So remember, we do sok offering, right? Sok offering, and what did we say the sok offering was? It's a collection. So in general, collection. Soknam. And by the way, wow, this is an amazing Tibetan lesson. In that, okay, sok, sange chodan soki chok. Okay, sok, that's the same word. So here they're translating it as supreme assembly, right? Assembly is another way they gloss the sok. In the sok offering that we do on the 10th and 25th of the month, right? We said there's three meanings to that. We gather all of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas inseparable from our guru, and we make the sok offering to them. We gather us, practitioners together to do this offering. And in so doing, we complete the collection of merit and transcendental wisdom. That's the causes to achieve enlightenment. Okay, so here, Supreme Assembly, Soki Chok. Chok means supreme. Then you should know, right? The Ratna, right? The three jewels, normally they translate it, right? It's Kunchok Sum, right? Kunchok, same chok. Okay. I'm sorry. You're getting all sorts of Tibetan lessons, but this is a bit important. Okay. So here we go in the footnotes. So is His Holiness the Dalai Lama who had said this? Instead of saying Sunamki, say Soknamki. Okay. And to translate Soknam as merits, rather than the commonly used translation of accumulation or collections. Okay. So I didn't know that. I normally translate that as collections because, so why now does His Holiness advise to change it to Soknam? Okay. So normally there are these, we're saying the causes of enlightenment. We have the Sonam Gitsok and Yeshe Gitsok. Okay, we have the collection of merit and the collection of Yeshe, transcendental wisdom, right? Which are respectively the causes of the form body of the Buddha and the Dharmakaya, the wisdom body of Buddha. Sonam Gitsok is for the form body of Buddha. Yeshe Gitsok is the cause of the wisdom body, the Dharmakaya, the enlightened mind. Right? So now we were saying Gipe Sunamki, okay? Dagi Jinso. So by my merit of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha. Then the merit normally it just will include the cause for the form body of Buddha, but then His Holiness was saying, okay, we should have Soknam to also make us remember wisdom. Okay, if we just have Sunam, it'll be the first 3.5 perfections. You get this? And His Holiness says, even in this one verse, we can encapsulate the entire Buddha Dharma. We have bodhicitta, we have refuge, and then what else is needed? What else do we need? We have bodhicitta. We need something on wisdom side. So even when we say this dak, right? You know, by my collection, I go for refuge, right? Right? Then we should just a little bit remember, oh, how does this I exist? Exists like an illusion, and then exists as a dependent arising, and then we can remember the ultimate view as well. Okay? Okay. So, in any case, Rinpoche explains that the two types of merit are the merit of virtue and the merit of wisdom, often respectively translated as the accumulation of merit and the accumulation of wisdom. So, yeah. Anyway, if you have, by the way, these prayer books, and this is the retreat prayer book, the latest version, you know, there's a lot of good things in the footnotes. Okay. If you ever read a book translated by Jeffrey Hopkins, in some sections, the footnotes are longer than the actual work. So if you don't know, Jeffrey Hopkins is a great scholar, great translator, and yeah, very prolific. And he translated, among other things, the well, one thing that I used quite extensively was his translation of the mind-only section of the Essence of Eloquence by Lama Tsongkhapa. Okay. Oops. Okay. So here we're back. So we can say, Dagi Chinyengi pe Soknamki instead of Sunamki, Jola Pinja Sangi Jubasho. So anyway, this is the special formulation for refuge before receiving teachings. And then later, for auspiciousness, you should know this. When you teach, okay, so normally here, right, at Sera, when there's a Lamrim teaching, whatever kind of teaching, then we recite this. But the teacher, right, they're not listening to the Dharma right now. So they will say, Dagi Chishe. She is like to explain. So the teacher will say dagi chushe gibe sonam ki, but then everyone in the audience, they say dagi chinyen. Okay. Now, if you are attending a teaching in the West, I've seen teachers, they'll just, even though they're on the throne and they're teaching, they'll say chinyen because they're like, these people, they get so confused if I say chishe and they're supposed to say nyen, and they'll think, yeah. So they'll do like that. It's kind of like, for example, when we take the Bodhisattva vows, there's a part where you say your name, right? So in the text, the word for name is Ming. And sometimes people will say Ming, It's like, it should be in like italics, like insert your name here. But people, when they read that, they'll say like, I name from now until I reach enlightenment. It should be like I, whatever, Mary Ellen, well, whatever, right? Okay. All right. You guys knew that before about this whole thing? Oh man. Bay, you heard that explanation about this refuge verse in reference to teaching?
Not the one about the teaching part, but I remember that there's a swap from the Daki Jinsok to Chonyan.
I see. Okay. All right. Well, in any case, there you go. So let's do 3 times. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly by my merits of explaining the Dharma. May I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly by my merits of explaining the Dharma. May I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly by my merits of explaining the Dharma. May I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. Okay. Yeah. So these little tangents, they're very valuable in my opinion. But yeah, it took us a little bit of time to explain these things. So now I mentioned I have a confession. Okay. And so here it comes. Okay. When we were conceiving this course, Bay and I were going back and forth about which translation to use. Okay. And I got totally mixed up. Okay. Okay. Keeping it real. I confused the Dhammapada with Jataka Tales. My bad. And so, many of you know, I was recently traveling, and so I wasn't here. And so, like, even last week's session, I'm like, okay, good. We're gonna do Golden Light Sutra for 1 week. I'll like, I hadn't even really looked at the translation yet. Okay. Of the Jataka Tales. I'm like, okay, I'll cross that bridge when I get there. We'll do Golden Light Sutra. So then after when I came to look at the text, this translation, by the way, how many of you have that one? Yeah. Okay, 2. All right. Yeah, 3. Okay, did you look at it? No. Well, then. Okay. No problem. No problem. So I actually I hmm, I got the the electronic version. And when I look, you see, it's not a full translation. It's like uh you know, it's this author's this commentator basically summarizing, right? So here, this cane stock story. So, right, this story popular in Myanmar is a type that gives a folk explanation of a natural occurrence. It could be easily translated as how the cane reed got its hole. And then you start talking about Rudyard Kipling. So I'm like, wait a minute. This isn't this is like a kind of commentary and a summary of the Jataka Tales. So some, there are some, verses that are done and so forth. But in my opinion, this is good, and actually I read the introduction or sort of went through the introduction, and the introduction is very good. Sets the context and all this. But yeah, the other one we were looking at, okay, and the other thing about this, remember I told you Jataka Tales, there's versions that came through and now are found in the Pali tradition, okay, and then the one that we use in the Tibetan tradition was the one that was sort of compiled by Aryasura. So okay, in the Pali tradition, uh the one they have, or one version has actually now please give me a little bit of leeway. I think it's something like 537 tales. Okay. Now the one in from Aryasura has 34. 34. So this version by Aryasura, now that has been translated a few times, and the most recent one is by Justin Mayland, okay, and it's published by New York University Press, okay. So now here, it's not just that everything in New York is expensive, although that's true, but everything published by these kind of academic presses are more expensive than, Penguin or, Simon and Schuster or whatever, right? So then when we were talking about like, oh, which version to use, and this kind of came up, also it's not as widely available, right? These university presses, they are, like quite specialized use. And so, I had decided, I thought, oh, let's go for the Penguin version. The other translation, which you got, is from Penguin, you know? So very easy. You can get that. No problem. This one is a bit difficult. It's also in 2 volumes. And it's like, okay, let's just go for that. But now in hindsight, I'm like, oh, one, the version that I selected is not actually the full translation. It's just kind of some overviews, very good. But what I thought we could do, so then I did research. And one good thing is that even this NYU version, okay, there are like online libraries when you can like borrow the book for an hour at a time. So this is my thought. This is my thought. What do you think about this? Last week we started with the Golden Light Sutra. We went through the story of the Buddha with his 10,000 fish disciples. Great. We actually almost got through that whole chapter. And then the next chapter that we were supposed to go over is the chapter on the Tigris. Now, the chapter on the Tigris also is the first Jataka tale in Aryasura's Jataka Mala. Do you guys know that? So it's there. This story of the tiger is like so amazing, so wonderful, and I mentioned it shows up in Golden Light Sutra, it shows up in other sutras. And then it was chosen as to be like the first of the past life stories of Buddha in the Jataka Tales, or the Jataka Mala, compiled by Aryasura. So this is my plan. I don't say plan. My suggestion. Okay, let's go through the Golden Light Sutra again this week. Okay, and we'll do this past life of the Buddha giving his body, or the Bodhisattva giving his body to the tiger. We'll go through that chapter as is treated in Golden Light Sutra. By next week, what I thought we could do is I'm going to try to arrange that, and we can use Justin Malin's translation, and we can do a kind of screen share, and I'll do it in the more traditional Tibetan way, and we can kind of do it together. Okay, because of the availability of the paper book. I don't know how it is, but in US, but in India, it is like it's going to have to be sent from the US, and oh, actually, yeah. Yeah, it's okay. I'll just tell you, right? So many things in India are inexpensive. So this penguin version, 280 rupees. Okay, like $4. Volume 1 of the other one is 2,846 rupees. That's volume 1. So it's 10 times the price. So of course, when it comes to Dharma, right, we shouldn't be thinking so much about, about that. But in any case, it is available on this archive.com. So I'm gonna, but it's a kind of, you gotta make an account and borrow it, blah, blah, blah. So I have to work all that out. Well, we're gonna do that next week. How does that sound? Okay. Now, if some of you are like, oh man, you told me we're gonna be using, ooh, my screen sharing is paused. What happened? Okay. If now you're saying, oh man, I went out and bought the Penguin book. Well, first of all, I don't think you're doing that, because actually the three of you who have it, you didn't even open it either. So, but still, for next week, if you do have it already, the introduction is very good. The introduction will give the more of the kind of scholarly treatment of the various versions of it. You know, is good, but yeah, and it's stuff that I'm you know not as yeah. I'm not going to go into that very well. What I said last week about the intro, that's kind of enough, you know, for a practitioner standpoint. We don't need to know these you know these various versions that came out in different languages, all this, right? Why are we studying this text? Not to become a scholar and like, okay, there's 534 in the Pali, there's 34 in the Sanskrit, this many in the Chinese. But the whole point of studying this text is we need to learn the kinds of actions the Buddha did in his past lives to become the Buddha, right? That's the big picture. We're following in his footsteps. So what did he do? How did he train? Right? And so, you know, maybe scholars can dispute, oh, this one, it's only in the Pali, it's not in the Sanskrit, and then, you know, kind of dispute the authenticity. And even in general, we can a little bit ask like, oh, did this really happen? But whether or not, you know, because I can admit that there can be some corruption in the text. Maybe there's a bad translation, whatever, right? Things get lost. But for us, now when we read it, whether we're reading it in the Pali version, the Sanskrit version, the Tibetan version, Chinese, whatever, the point is, if we can gain inspiration, then it's good, right? If we can think, oh, yes, this story is illustrating a certain principle that I'm also trying to work on. So, and then these happen, right? Some Jataka tales, they're more emphasizing the perfection of generosity. Some are, you know, patience. You know, they're illustrating different of the qualities that we're trying to perfect, right? Mm. Some illustrate, you know, different aspects of karma. So as I mentioned in other contexts, right, most of you, we've gone through Lamrim, right, very, very well, I hope, right? And so remember, I was always emphasizing those Lamrim outlines, okay? And I was saying why those Lamrim outlines are important is because it becomes like the tree, like a Christmas tree. And just on a Christmas tree, we hang the various ornaments, right? Then we have the outline of Lamrim, and then whatever text we pick up later, those things we can say, oh, this is illustrating, you know, practice of generosity, and then we can hang it on our tree, right? Okay, perfection of generosity. Okay, yeah, that's in the six perfections section, generosity, and then we can put it in the larger context and larger framework. How does that sound? Okay. Oh, so we just got something in the chat as a PDF file. Okay, so maybe, yeah, taking a long time to download. Okay. Anyway, while that's downloading, what I thought we could do, let's just go back to the Golden Light Sutra. Okay. So now, oops. Hmm. I see. Okay. Okay. So I think we've done this before, but maybe we didn't do it last week. But this other sutra, the Sangata Sutra, Rinpoche very much advised to read to collect extensive merit and purify. And so in that text, there is this appendix about how we do a reading. Okay. Okay. So we have refuge and bodhicitta, and let's just kind of also just notice for a second. This is what we're saying: giving and other perfections. Okay. So since we did refuge and bodhicitta in the beginning of the teaching, we can just, hopefully it didn't degenerate. Then we do 7 prayer. I didn't mention explicitly this time, but normally, right, we also visualize the object of refuge in the space in front, visualize all sentient beings in the space around us. Then the 7 prayer. 7 prayer contains all the aspects to purify and accumulate merit. So we can do that together. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of psychic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. Then mandala offering. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, sun and moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. I prostrate and go for refuge to the Guru and 3 precious gems. Please bless my mind. I am requesting you to immediately pacify all wrong conceptions from incorrect devotion to the Guru up to the subtle dual view of the white, red, and dark visions that exist in my mind and in the minds of all mother sentient beings. I'm requesting you to immediately generate all the right realizations from Guru devotion up to enlightenment in my mind and the minds of all mother sentient beings. I'm requesting you to pacify all outer and inner obstacles to actualizing the entire graduated path to enlightenment in my mind and in the minds of all mother sentient beings. It says 3 times, but we can just do once. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niratayami. And then, right, if you know me, I'm always, telling you guys this. Tayata Om Dare Dare Bendare Soha, 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 Tayata Om Dare Dare Bendare Soha. And then this I also often mention, but here we have the kind of exact instructions. So there's 2 ways to visualize while reading sutras, and both can be done at the same time. So visualize that Buddha is giving you the teaching directly while you read the sutra, and you actualize realizations in your heart while you're reciting. When reciting, visualize that you're giving teaching to sentient beings as you read the sutra out loud. Since dogs, cats, birds, spirits, and other beings can hear you as you recite, you can invite the spirits and devas to listen as well. The sutra is medicine for mind's delusions from See, this is the English grammar nerd in me. Okay. So some of you, maybe English isn't your first language. So you see, from where all sufferings come from. Okay. Now, it's okay, but usually, okay, stylistically, we don't want to end a sentence with, what is this? A preposition. So maybe a little bit better to say, from which all sufferings come, from where all sufferings come. The sutra is medicine for the mind's delusions, from where all sufferings come. Yeah, that's better. Okay. You got all sorts of Tibetan lessons today, so a little, English grammar is okay too, right? So it's always easier to, when you're reading something, to find these things. I'll admit, I worked on a translation, and then I submitted it to someone for comments, and they had all sorts of comments. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. Okay. Then when you read the sutra, visualize that you're giving teachings to beings of all six realms, offering them the opportunity to actualize the path and be liberated from their delusions, defilements, karma, and suffering. As you recite or read, when you have finished, visualize that you and all beings, the hell beings, animals, and so on, are purified by unfathomable numbers of nectar beams coming from unfathomable numbers of bodhisattvas. On this basis, visualize clearly that you and all the beings receiving teachings are generating extraordinary bliss and emptiness. After you finish reading the sutra, visualize the ascending beings you've been studying the sutra to. So here again, right? A little bit there. Visualize that the sentient beings to whom you have been reciting the sutras are all liberated from the cause of suffering. Now, I will say, yeah, maybe, yeah, it's good to say. Language is it's always, evolving. So like, before, again, I'm only saying this because I know there's many of you, English isn't your first language. So, right? To whom? Okay. To whom? You guys know whom and who difference? So here's a little rule of thumb. Urs, you know? No. Okay, it's cool. It's hey, listen, I have utmost respect. Then people they're coming into something, it's not their first language. Yeah. So no shade. I'm not throwing shade on you. That's some new slang, right? You guys know that? Throwing shade, it means to like kind of a little bit criticize. See, I teach intro courses at Tushita where it's all like these 20-year-olds, right, from various places. So I have to remain yeah, in touch. Okay, anyway, whom, here's a good way to think about it, right? Now you could say like right, who who is it, right? Or like who is cooking today? Okay, who's cooking today? And then we would say, right, like, oh, uh Tenzin is cooking today, right? Who does this mala belong to? It belongs to Tenzin. Okay. Now, when you change that into prepositions, right? He is cooking today. This mala belongs to him, right? Right? Whether it's the subject or the object. Now, when you use whom, right? Visualize that the sentient beings to whom you have been reciting the sutra. Okay. Now, if you ask, like, who were you reciting the sutra to? And you say, I was reciting the sutra to Tenzin. I was reciting the sutra to him. I was reciting the sutra to him. So that my rule of thumb for whom, you can think, if the answer is going to be to him, you have the M, then whom. You don't say, right, I recite the sutra to he. You say, I recited the sutra to him. I gave the sutra to him. You know, this mala belongs to him. To whom does this mala belong? That's the old way of saying things. So nowadays, since language is evolving, you don't see whom that much, especially when we talk. They'll be like, what are you, some kind of, some kind of nerd, right? But in the written language, you'll see that a little bit still. I don't know. I'm really sorry. But yeah. Okay. Their cause of delusions are purified and they all become enlightened, then dedicate the merit and rejoice. Reciting sutras for these extensive benefits is how Bodhisattva Samattabhadra practice using extensive visualizations. Okay. Okay. So okay, so this is how so last week actually we came almost to the end of this chapter on the fish disciples. So it was just two more pages left. So since we're out of time or running short on time because someone chose to give language lessons, then we'll just go ahead to the chapter on the tigress, okay? And again, like we did last week, what I thought we could do, because of the extensive benefits of reading the sutra, we can recite this together, and then at various points, we can pause, and I like this word, embellish. I will embellish the story with a few comments. Okay? So, chapter 18, chapter on the tigress. Furthermore, O noble goddess, the Bodhisattva gives away even their body and life to help others. How is that so? Accompanied by 1,000 bhikshus, the Tathagata projecting bright rays of hundreds of pure and vast virtues to heaven and earth, possessing power to eclipse challengers with unobstructed wisdom, sight, and power, was passing through the regions of the Panchalas when they came to a certain forest. There he saw an area lush with green, dark green and soft grass, and embellished with various, assorted fragrant meadow flowers. Seeing this, the Tathagata said to Venerable this site is beautiful, Ananda. It has the mark of being the place of a Dharma teaching. Lay a seat for the Tathagata. Okay. Now, I'll say this, right? So we mentioned many times the Abhisamaya Alamkara, right, written by Maitreya, is one of the 5 great texts that we study here at Sera. Now, I will say, yeah, one one benefit, okay, of reciting these, sorry, of studying these very, traditional extensive texts, right? We mentioned Abhisamayalamkara is a commentary to the hidden meaning of the Prajnaparamita Sutras, right? So in the Prajnaparamita Sutras, you'll see all these things. Okay, sorry. In the Abhisamayalamkara itself, you'll see many lists, right? the five forces, five powers, these 10 fearlessnesses, the this, the that. Okay. And so this one, the power to eclipse challengers, is like one of the powers of the Buddha. And it is said, okay, there's certain gods, and these gods, right, they have like radiance, natural radiance. Okay. And because of that, there's a story where the gods, they're quite proud, right? They're quite proud of themselves. They're like, oh, I'm so radiant. So one time the Buddha, to subdue the pride of the god realms, because as we said many times, pride is one of the main obstacles to progressing along the path. Why? Because if you think, you're well, if you think you're enlightened and you're not, you'll not think you have to do anything to change, right? If you think in general that you have more qualities than you have, and you're sort of inflating, then you're going to, not do the work that actually needs to be done, right? So these gods, thinking they're so great, oh, look at my radiance, right? They weren't open to receive teachings from Buddha, right? So the Buddha, in order to make their minds suitable to receive the teachings, he went and sort of visited these gods, and then he radiated, right? Even kind of more than all those gods. And then those gods are like, oh, wow, okay. I thought I was radiant, but no, no, wow, like this, right? They're humbled. They're humbled. Then with that humility, they're open receptacles for the teachings. So that is one of the powers of the Buddha, and that's described actually in the first stanza of the second chapter of Abhisamayalamkara. Lanam Ruma Chawi Chir Ugi Mokmo Borzedang. Okay. So we had enough Tibetan lessons. I'm not going to go into that. But anyway, short. Lanam Ruma Chawi Chir Ugi Momo Borzedang. So in order to make the gods suitable for the teachings through the kind of making them humble through his radiating light. Okay. As instructed by the Tathagata, a seat was set up. Having set up the seat, Ananda said to the Tathagata, the seat is laid, O transcendent Lord, chief and supreme among bipeds, freeing beings from bondage, you bestow supreme benefit upon humans. Be seated, and may the nectar of sublime discourse for the benefit of humans kindly be given. Very nice. So, as we mentioned many times, always out of respect for the Dharma teachings, a seat is set up for the teacher. And yeah, that is out of respect for the Dharma, right? Then the Tathagata sat on the seat and addressed the bhikshus in this way. Would you like to see the remains of a bodhisattva who performed tasks that are difficult to perform? When addressed in that way, those bhikshus replied to the Tathagata, O sublime sage, the time is right for us to see the remains of one, the best of supreme beings, in whom rested inconceivable virtues, right? So, right? These inconceivable virtues rested in him, this sublime stage. Therefore, we see in whom. Okay. Of immense patience, fortitude, and wisdom, delight in calm humility in the mind of recollection, tell us well. Then the Tathagata struck the surface of the earth with his hand, whose palm was soft as a newly blossomed lotus and marked with a 1,000-spoke wheel. As soon as he struck it, the earth shook in 6 ways, and there arose a stupa made of gold, silver, and jewels. Then the Tathagata said to the Venerable Ananda, Ananda, open up the stupa. Heeding these instructions, the Venerable Ananda opened the stupa. Inside, he saw an urn covered with gold and inlaid with jewels and pearls. Having seen this, he said to the Tathagata, O transcendent Lord, there's an urn made of gold. The Tathagata said, open these 7 urns. Accordingly, he opened them. He saw relics whose colors were snow, like snow and white lily. Seeing this, the Venerable Ananda said to the Tathagata, O transcendent Lord, these are relics. The Tathagata said, Ananda, bring here these relics of the great being. Then the Venerable Ananda took those relics and brought them to the Tathagata, taking the relics to the 1,000 bhikshus and holding them in his hand. The Tathagata addressed them in this way. Here are the bones of one endowed with excellent virtue and supreme intellect, humility, meditation, delight through patience, and sublime fame. One who continually strove for the wisdom of his enlightened, intelligent, and possessing steadfast, joyous perseverance, he always delighted in giving. Then the Tathagata said this to the 1,000 bhikshus, O bhikshus, offer homage to the Bodhisattva's relics fully charged with ethics and virtue, which are a field of merit and extremely rare to see. Then their hearts filled with aspiration, those bhikshus paid homage to the relics with hands folded in reverence. With hands folded, the Venerable Ananda addressed the Tathagata in this way. The Tathagata transcendent victor has risen above the world and is venerated by all beings. How is it that the Tathagata venerates these remains? Okay, I should say this here. So first of all, we know, or maybe you don't know, but so the relics, there are different ones, but in general, they're the remains of these great beings. Okay, so Lama Zopa Rinpoche, whenever he traveled, he would carry with him many various relics. And, you know, a while ago, you know, they were doing a kind of relic tour for the Maitreya project. And these various relics of different masters and the Buddha himself, they were going to go inside the big Maitreya statue that they were planning to build. I'm not sure where these relics are now. I think they're still in Bodh Gaya. They're going to still build a smaller Maitreya statue, not a 500-foot one. But anyway, then those relics, you know, were taken around the world. It is seen that seeing the relic of the Buddha, one attains the same benefit as seeing the actual Buddha. After the Buddha, before the Buddha passed away, he instructed that his relics be divided into 8 parts and then given, you know, so they could go to different regions. And yeah, and in any case, to see these relics of Buddha is, you know, extremely fortunate. As it is said, you didn't have the, but you know, one. So now Ananda is asking, hey, you know, asking to the Buddha, you are transcendent, and the whole world venerates you. Why are you venerating these remains? So then the Tathagata replied in this way to the Venerable Ananda, Ananda, is because these relics that I awoke to peerless and supreme enlightenment. Ananda, formerly in a long time past, there was a king called Maharata who possessed chariots, wielded great power, and defeated opponents through unobstructed might and strength. He had 3 sons who were like the sons of the gods, Maha, Prananda, Mahadeva, and Mahasattva. One day, the king went to a park for sport. Drawn by the enchanting qualities of the park and wishing to find flowers, the princes ran about and entered the great Dvada Shavanagumla forest. As the princes ran about, their attendants were dismissed and they went on their own way. The princes entered into thick 12 forests of that fully protected forest reserve. Then Mahaprananda spoke to his brothers. My heart was overwhelmed by fear. We might be killed by wild beasts. Stay close. Mahadeva said, as for me, I have no fear, but I'm anxious I might be separated from my loved ones. Mahasattva said, here in the forest solitude acclaimed by seers, I am not anxious nor I have fear. This heart of mine is greatly overjoyed in hope of finding opportunity for vast and great benefit. So we can see these three brothers, they're the different kind of mindset they have as they enter this, thick forest, right? Then as the princes strolled through the Dvada Shavana Gulma forest, they came upon a tigress who had given birth the previous week. Surrounded by her offspring, hungry and thirsty, famished, her body extremely feeble. Seeing her, Mahaprananda said, alas, it would be 6 or 7 days since this wretch gave birth. She has not found food. Either she will die of starvation or devour her own cubs. To this, Mahasattva said, what is the food of this wretch? Mahaprananda said, here they say that fresh meat and warm blood is food suitable for tigers, bears, hyenas, and lions. Mahadeva said, this wretch, her body tortured by hunger and thirst, has little life left. She is extremely feeble and cannot look for food. Who would sacrifice their life to save hers? Mahaprananda, O good fellows, giving one's body is a daunting task. Mahasattva said, for people like us, feeble-minded and greatly attached to the body, such an act is difficult indeed. However, great beings embark on giving their bodies completely and dauntlessly strive for others' welfare. Moreover, born of affectionate love and compassion, Arya beings who consider their bodies as just obtained in heaven or on this earth, their joyous minds are most agreeable to saving others' lives. Remaining steadfast would have 100-fold compassion in this case. Feeling very sad, the young prince looked at the tigress for a length of time without blinking, then went on his way. Then Mahasattva had this thought, now the time has come for me to give this body away. Why? Although I have long guarded this putrid body subject to death and decay, providing it with food and drink, clothing, vehicles, and luxurious beds, ultimately it is doomed to crumble and end in woe. This body has no purpose save to abandon its unknown nature. Furthermore, since it is wholly impure, it will not endure. Now I should use it for a noble end. Thus, it shall be for me like a boat crossing the ocean of death and rebirth. Moreover, giving this body possessed of hundreds of abscess-like existences, filled with feces and urine without core like foam, bearing hundreds of worms, laying waste to what has been done, I shall attain the Dharmakaya's timeless state, free of the afflicted aggregates, sorrowless, endowed with samadhi, replete with hundreds of stainless virtues. His heart brimming with supreme compassion and resolve, he asked his brothers to leave him. You too can go off. I'm returning to the Dvada Shavana Gulma for a personal thing. Then the Prince Mahasattva left that part of the forest and returned to where the tigress was. He hung his clothes on a forest creeper and prayed. To benefit transmigrating beings, may attain the peace of peerless enlightenment. My mind, compassionate and steadfast, I give this body which others find hard to give up. May I achieve flawless, peerless enlightenment that bodhisattvas so keenly seek. I shall free beings in the triple worlds from their intense fear of the ocean of existence. Then Mahasattva lay in front of the tigress, but the tigress did nothing to the compassionate bodhisattva. The bodhisattva thought, alas, she is too weak and incapable. He rose up in search of a sharp weapon and did not find one. Taking hold of a strong branch of a bamboo stick 100 years old, he cut his throat and fell down before the tigress. When the bodhisattva fell down, the earth shook in 6 ways, like a boat pounded by winds amidst the sea. The sun, as if caught by Rahu, did not shine with its rays. Flowers mingled with divine perfumes and powders fell. Then a certain goddess, her mind overwhelmed with astonishment, praised the bodhisattva. O noble-minded one, holding all beings in your compassion, here as you joyfully give your body, hero among men, before long and without trouble, you'll find pristine peace, that tranquil supreme state, devoid of birth and death's pain. Then licking the blood-stained body of the bodhisattva, the tigress reduced his body to bones without flesh and blood. Okay. So yeah, maybe to comment a bit. Yeah, so you understand what happened. Seeing this tigress, and now, it was too weak to go find food. Look for food. So although the others sort of, not at the point where they felt they could give their body, the Mahasattva, who is the Buddha in his previous life, then had this very nice, now is the time for me to give up this body, and in so doing, I will attain Dharmakaya's timeless state. And then, tells his brothers to go off, and then makes this very beautiful aspiration. So one thing I wanted to mention now, because it comes up, when we see the bodhisattvas give away their bodies, then, I always mention Shantideva's verse in the Bodhisattva Charvatara, where he says, until one is ready, basically, until it is as easy to give away, these other 2 princes who are afraid, yeah, it's okay. Don't feel you have to give your body up for a tiger. So we do what we can, and over a long period of time, as we practice with something smaller, then we gradually build up the capacity to do more and more things. Okay. So feeling the earthquake, Mahaprananda said to Mahadeva, the way the earth with his seas greatly shook as far as oceans in all 10 directions. The way the sun lost its rays and a rain of flowers has fallen, my mind is troubled. My brother has now given his body. Mahadeva said, considering the words of compassion he spoke and the way he keenly observed the tigress, tortured by suffering and weak, nearly eating her cubs, I too am troubled. Then overcome by extreme grief, their eyes filling with tears, the young princes went back along the path to where the tigress was. They saw his clothes hanging on bamboo shoots, his bloody bones scattered about, his hair spread in every direction. Upon seeing this, they fainted and fell down upon the remains. Reviving after some time, they raised their arms and issued a wretched cry, "Alas, our beloved brother." The king and our mother, too, were most devoted to their son. Our mother surely asked, "Where did you leave the third one of you, whose eyes are long as lotus petals?" Alas, for the two of us in this part of the forest land, living is not as good as meeting death. Having lost Mahasattva, how will our parents care for us? Then, lamenting in many ways, the two princes went on their way. Their servants, running in all directions in search of the princes, saw them and asked, "Princes, what happened? What happened?" At that moment, the queen was lying on her bed. She dreamed a dream showing separation from a loved one. Her two breasts were cut off and her teeth were wrenched out. Finding the three young frightened ones, one was snatched by a hawk. Terrified by the earthquake, the queen awoke and suddenly thought, "Why did the sustainer of beings clothed in oceans so violently shake?" The sun was robbed of its rays, pointing to the sorrow in my heart. In my dream, my body is weak. My eyes quivered, my breasts were cut off. I wonder if my son's gone to the forest to play sport or well. As the queen sustained these thoughts, a maidservant entered. Distressed, she spoke to the queen. "Mother, the prince's attendants search for the prince. It is heard your beloved son has perished." When she heard these words, with trembling heart and eyes filled with tears, the queen approached the king. "Lord, I have heard that my darling son has perished." The king too was distraught. With trembling heart, he said, "I have lost my beloved son." To give solace to the queen, the king said, "Good queen, do not grieve. I will immediately search for our prince." As he set off, he saw a gathering of people crowding about. Then the king saw the two princes approaching from afar. Upon seeing them, the king cried, "The princes are coming, but not all three. Alas, it is agony to see one bereaved of a son." The joy of gaining a son for a man does not equal the pain of losing a son for another. Are those men not happy who have no sons in the world, or who have met death with their children still living? Overcome with grief, the queen, like a she-camel struck in the vital part, issued a most wretched cry. "If my three sons with their assembly of servants entered the forest clearing overgrown with blossoms, my youngest darling son has not returned. Where is the last son who is like my heart?" When the two princes came near, the king asked, "Where is the youngest of you?" Grief-stricken, their eyes filled with tears, their mouth dry, they said nothing. The queen asked, "Where is my youngest son? My heart is about to burst. My body is in unbearable pain. My mind is failing. Speak at once." Then the two sons told what had occurred. Upon hearing it, the king and queen became senseless. When they regained their sanity, they wept pitifully and went to that place. Seeing the bones without flesh, blood, or muscle, and the hair scattered about, the king and queen fell to the ground like trees blown down by the wind. The priests and ministers witnessed these events, then refreshed and revived the bodies of the king and queen with the salve of Malaya sandal. Upon reviving, the king arose and cried this lamentation, "Alas, beloved son, affectionate and jovial, why have you gone so quickly to death's domain? Why has death not come to me instead? Never have I felt suffering greater than this." With bedraggled hair beating her chest, the queen too wailed pitifully. She writhed on the ground as does a fish thrown onto dry land, a female buffalo deprived of her young, a she-camel whose offspring has perished. Alas, who has crushed and scattered on the ground my darling son, this lotus most loving? Which enemy of mine on this earth today has slain my son of charming eyes and moon-like face? Alas, when seeing the best of sons slain upon the ground, why does this body not collapse? This heart of mine is clear. Clearly made of iron, it does not crack in the face of tragic pain. Today, in my dream, my breasts were cut with a sword, my teeth were wrenched from my mouth. And today, my darling son is suddenly no more. Just as one of the three doves I held was snatched by a hawk, today, surrounded by three sons, death has seized one. Alas, the fruit of my evil dream has come to pass. Then the king and queen lamented in many ways. Surrounded by a large crowd, they bared themselves of ornaments, paid homage to the remain of their son, and laid his remains in this place. Ananda, if you think that the young prince called Mahasattva at that time, at that moment, was another, do not see it like that. Why? At that time, at that moment, I was the young prince called Mahasattva Ananda. Even before I was wholly free of ignorance, hatred, and desire, I saved beings from the suffering of the hells. Now that I am free of all weakness and arrived at enlightenment's perfection, how much more would I wish to free all beings? In this way, for the sake of just one being, I've happily remained in the hell realms for eons. I have freed beings completely from the cycle of birth. With the most excellent of hearts, I've helped all beings and performed numerous and different daunting tasks. Then the Tathagata at that time pronounced these verses while seeking supreme enlightenment. I gave my body for many eons, just as I became a king or prince, so I completely gave my body. So we are almost out of time. So here the Buddha is just going to kind of recount that story in verse. Yeah, but this actually forms the end of the story in prose. So we can pause here. So you'll see similar things in many sutras. The point being, right? Yes, we wish to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, but even before we're enlightened, right? So even before the Buddha was enlightened, right? Even before he was fully free of ignorance, hatred, and desire, saved many beings from the suffering of hells, right? So even if, bodhisattvas or even we were doing that before we achieve enlightenment, then after we or the Buddha or whoever achieves enlightenment, how much more would they wish to free all beings? Okay. So yeah, the lesson for us is, although we have this mind to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, in whatever capacity we have, even now, even before we're bodhisattvas, even before we're enlightened, then we should do what we can to benefit beings. And yeah, don't wait, right? Don't wait. So let us leave it at that. So at the end of our recitation, remember, we think that all the beings who receive these teachings from us are completely purified and they receive all the realizations. And then we can dedicate. May whatever virtue I've collected benefit the teachings and all transmigratory beings, and in particular may it cause the essence of perfect pure Losandrakpa, perfect pure Losandrakpa's teachings to shine forever. So also dedicate that this mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta, be generated in our minds and the minds of all sentient beings without even a second's delay. And that mind of enlightenment, may it increase forevermore without declining. Okay, so maybe we leave it at that. Okay, so I'm just looking at the text you shared, Marilyn, and it's not the one I was looking at. So what I'll do is this. I will check. And I think we'll go through some of the actual Jataka Tales next week. So as I mentioned, please read the intro if you have the Penguin edition. It'll give good context. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Okay? All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.